Welcome to Almost Pro Bites, where we take a quick bite at the biggest conversations in sport. Today's conversation talks to athlete identity. We're seeing more and more moments where what an athlete says or believes becomes a headline. So the question today is, can your beliefs actually cost you your career in sport? What do you think?
It feels like we're seeing this conversation more and more, right? We're seeing it pop up in news forums, in our own, social circles. I don't think athletes are being judged on performance alone anymore. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who thinks they are. I think we're all seeing it. We're seeing that they're now being judged on, yes, the way they perform, but also what they post. So what they're sharing publicly, what they're seen to support, what they say.
Yeah, and even what they don't say can become a thing now. Like silence gets interpreted as a stance these
Yeah,
days.
it does. Yeah, it does. And I think that's the shift. I think where sport, and maybe prior to being such an entertainment concept, more just about a performance concept, it was about performing well. You'd stay on a team, right? They needed you. You were doing great. They kept you. But
Mhm.
now it's more like performing well doesn't guarantee you the spot on the team, because you also need to represent the values of the organization you're tied to, the contracted values.
Yeah, well, that's where it gets tricky, right? Because
Mm.
athletes aren't just athletes anymore.
Yeah.
They're also public figures, whether they want to be or not.
Yeah, it's so true. And you can imagine the weight of those expectations, right? You can
Mm.
that it's coming from their teammates. Everyone's wanting to make sure that if this team's going well, can that guy over there just keep his opinions to himself, or can that girl over there just keep her opinions to herself? It's coming from the clubs because it's documented, right? In lots of contracts now, it's made clear these are the values we align with, and these are the expectations of what you can say or do publicly. It's coming from leagues more broadly who are needing to manage across the board to make sure that irrespective of an individual club's values, we're all complying with what the league expects. It's coming from fans without question. And you and I can talk about this at great detail, that we want to believe the athlete we've connected with on social media is as close to a friend as you're going to get. We know them, right? We feel like we know them. We know them personally. We're cheering for them on a first name basis from sidelines. So we have an expectation that they'll produce a belief system or show a values base that aligns to ours. And when it doesn't, it hurts. But there's the big one that is the way that sponsors or brand partners are seeing these athletes, and that they're seeking out the brand ambassador that's going to be the lowest risk.
Absolutely. We've seen this play out so many times in recent
Yeah.
years. I think one of the most famous examples, particularly out of Australia anyway, was Israel Folau, where
Yeah.
his contract was terminated
Yep.
over social media posts tied to his beliefs.
Yep.
And then there's other notable athletes as well. We speak on a global level. We've got Kyrie Irving, where what he shared had consequences beyond just basketball.
Yep.
Novak Djokovic, another global example, where he missed I think it was the 2022 Australian Open due to being unvaccinated for COVID-19.
Mhm.
Huge impacts there for
Mhm.
him with sponsors and these missing of these major tournaments as well impact your career
Yep.
uh, overall of what accomplishments you can make in your relatively short period of being a professional.
Mm.
And then on the flip side of that, we've also got Megan Rapinoe, who had actually had a positive
Yep.
impact
Yep.
where people really rallied behind her stance. So there's sort of both sides of the outcome of sharing your beliefs. But I think what's interesting about all of those is it's not just about all of those players, it's not just about their belief. It's about the platform that they're using to share those beliefs.
Right. And which is a little bit double pronged, because one side of it is they've created that platform because of their athletic competency, because of their role in that sporting position. But at the same time, athletes now are creating brand identity. They're
Yeah.
they're their own people, right? So they're creating this asset value associated to them and as an individual. Like I said, let's tie that back to brand partnerships. It's what is the individual offering, and my kids can name individual athletes more than they can name the teams they're a part of
Yeah.
because it's what they're exposed to, right? So it begs the question that once something is public, surely we all recognize it's bigger than the individual. It's about the team, it's about the brand of the team, it's about the league, it's about their partnerships.
Yeah, but where does that leave the athletes then? You know, because on one hand, you want people to be authentic. We are drawn to players for their personalities. Nick Kyrgios is a great example of a player that people are drawn to because of their personality. Whether you're for him, whether you're against him, you know about him because of his personality out on the court. But then on the other hand, there are real consequences, like those players we mentioned before.
Yeah, yeah. So it probably suggests there might not be a clean answer here, right? That two things can be true at once. That athletes should be allowed to have their own beliefs. They're humans. We should all be allowed to have our own beliefs. But at the same time, organizations or contractual liabilities need to be upheld. So when those things clash, that's the part where we as the public, we start to receive this information. And I reckon this is what changes the way people show up, because you start to see them self censor when they've seen someone nearby get done for expressing a personal belief that conflicts with the league they're a part of or the team they're a part of. You start to see hesitation in being a part of expressing their views or using their platform to make a statement, to whatever is current or political or whatever matters to them, and that you see them start to play safe. So, and I wonder whether that allows them to authentically show up.
Yeah, great points, great question. It's wild when you think about it because sport used to be the place where you could go and just play. And I think through different levels and different factors, there is that self-censorship like you mentioned, but sport globally was one of the very few avenues that countries had to break down barriers, that people of different cultures, people of different opinions could come together and just play the game,
Yeah.
just play the sport they were focusing on. And then on the other side of that as well, I think that there is often a misconception that professional players in particular have a lot more freedom and flexibility to change organizations once they have become a professional. So they may be unable to join an organization that does share their beliefs and do need to go, okay, well, I need to self censor because it's important that I keep this contract. And so therefore, I need to make sure that I'm not sharing anything that contradicts the beliefs of the organization.
So true. But also might stop people from moving towards opportunities if they already know that it's not a safe haven for them.
Yeah,
Y
absolutely.
Yeah. I imagine it's an environment where you're constantly feeling evaluated. I imagine that on the scale of public profile that the athletes we're talking about are living, there is just this constant expectation that you're being evaluated.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't align, what happens then?
Well, I think we know. I think we've seen it, right? In many codes now, we've seen what happens when there is a lack of alignment or what seemed to be a speaking out. So
Yeah.
so this isn't just about performance anymore, it's about alignment.
That's the question, isn't it? More and more athletes are having to navigate
Mm.
not just how do I perform, but what do I stand for and what am I willing to risk for it?
Yeah, I agree, Laura. Well, that's it for this Almost Pro Bite. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this one because we don't think this one has a simple answer. So we'll look out for your comments and feedback. Until then, see you next time.
See you then.